So I've seen an uncharacteristic amount of westerns this year. I think I tallied about like 8 or 9 in a very short time. And I'm kind of wondering why you think that they might be making a resurgence at this point.
Well, you know, westerns are like everything else. Everything comes and goes. And I remember when Unforgiven came out, everybody thought the western was dead. And then Unforgiven came out, and a million other westerns came out. And part of that was probably due to how good Unforgiven was, and part of it had to do with probably people just ready to see him again. You know, eventually people are gonna get burned out on superhero movies, and they'll be out of fashion for a decade, and then somebody will make one that's great, and people fall in love with them again. It's kind of like any fad. It's like a style of music, or I find them uniquely American and
Yes.
interesting, and they're fun to act in because there's so much about people. You know, it's people in the landscape, right? You know, it's really something about westerns are about the individual against nature. You just see this face against the desert plain.
I was going to say, I mean, it must have been fun to act in because you did 2, right? Almost back to back.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of wondering because they're pretty different movies. I mean, different budgets, obviously, like that. So I'm wondering what the biggest difference in direction might have been between Ty and Antoine, maybe?
Well, it is funny because they're going to be compared because they're both cowboy movies, but they almost share nothing else.
I agree with that.
You know, I mean, Magnificent Seven is really a true blue ensemble movie.
Right.
It's where the movie's not about any one of our characters. It's about a kind of collective storytelling. You know, it's a $100 million movie with, you know, 100 stuntmen sitting at the craft service thing waiting to go. I mean, it couldn't have felt more different. I think we had 1 horse wrangler on In the Valley of Violence. I think we had 60 on Magnificent Seven. But you are a part of that legacy of westerns. And think of when you think about the actors I grew up watching, you know, Jimmy Stewart probably, he made 40 westerns or something. Yeah. And some of the old wranglers used to talk about how this new generation of actors, we can't ride. You know, it used to be to be an actor was kind of like learning Shakespeare. You had to learn Shakespeare, you had to learn to ride, you had to learn fencing, right? You know, all that stuff.
So you were a rider?
Well, now I am, but I didn't start out one.
That's fair. So, I mean, In a Valley of Vines is obviously the smaller of the two. Like you just said, the budget's way less, but it never feels smaller, and I think that's one of the advantages that the film has. How did you guys kind of come together on set and make the film feel so big?
Well, part of that is in the DNA of the idea. You know, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is a great Western that feels epic and huge, and they probably made it for $5, you know?
Right.
Because the setting in this, it doesn't require we don't have 500 guys attacking a village. It's what's happening that's important in the movie is happening inside the characters. So Ty and Travolta and all of us, we really just went out to the desert for a couple weeks and came out with a movie. And it's largely in the DNA of the idea. I mean, that really is it. What Magnificent Seven is about is a town under siege. So you need a town, and you need you need a siege. I mean, you know, you need to populate the town. You know, I mean, I don't. You know, there are only 7 good guys in Magnificent Seven. I don't think there's 7 people in a Valley
Exactly.
of Violence. Do you know? So.
Well, I mean, the cast is so vibrant and so vicious, and I love the cast in the Valley of Violence. But I guess the one I want to ask most about is Mr. Travolta, because he is prime, like, 90s face-off Travolta, and I'm wondering if you have any great stories about working against him.
You know, every now and then this happens to me where you, like, meet a card-carrying icon to work with, and you start working with him, you're like, oh, this is why you're famous. You're awesome. You know, I mean, he has a lot of energy. He cares about movies. He understands movies. He understands humor, tone, mood, you know, what the audience is looking for. You know, one of my favorite scenes in the movie, one of the most original scenes in the movie and everything is when Travolta, you know, I got a showdown with the bad guy and Travolta's in between us both.
Yep. Oh my
It's
God.
an incredible scene. He's amazing in it. And Travolta can do something, and Face Off is a great example of this, that most people can't do, which is that he can be incredibly emotional and funny. You know, and a lot of people, they're either funny or they're very emotional, you know, but they can't be funny and emotional. And Travolta's always been able to do both.
That's fair. So I'm a fan of your John work, especially. I'm a horror guy, and you know, coming into this Ty West movie, were you at all surprised, you know, that this horror filmmaker went to the Western genre and kind of just picked it up like that?
No, because we went into it together. I mean, that's how this movie came to pass, was that I had done a couple horror movies with Blumhouse, right? And they wanted me to do another one. And I kept saying, hey, look, guys, I think I'm done with the scary movie for a bit, and I really tried to talk Jason Blum into doing a spaghetti western. It's like, why don't you guys, you need to, you should doing other kinds of genre movies, creature features, spaghetti westerns, sci-fi. I was trying to tell him about how much fun he could have doing low budget, other kinds of movies. And he had the same exact conversation with Ty West, who was trying to, and so Jason called me and said, you need to get together with Ty West. And I was like, all right. And so Ty and I got together, and Ty just pitched me this idea for a movie. And I loved the idea of it. And I said, listen, man, you write that script, and I'll make that movie. And so he did. So I know in the architecture of horror movie is a lot of what you need to know about making a film. People don't know this. It's like comedy a little bit. People think because comedy's funny or something that it isn't serious. Like, it's hard to make a good comedy, and it's hard to make a good scary movie. And if you know how to do that, it means you know how to edit. And if you know how to edit and you know the architecture of film. And so the Western is deeply cinematic too. And so for me, I knew that making a Western was going to be easier than making some of Ty's horror work.
Well, I hope you don't stay away from genre movies for too long.
I won't be going long.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Pleasure.